Hi, and welcome to Respect Me's Bullying It's Never Acceptable webinar modules. We created these modules as an online version of our one-day training so that you can watch them at a time and a place that suits you. My name is Laura, and as well as having a background in teaching, I deliver training on behalf of Respect Me. Thank you for joining us for this webinar series. You'll be learning about the importance of having robust anti-bullying practices in your organisation. We understand that professionals have lots of policies and initiatives to balance, so we're extra glad that you've made the time to join us today. You might want to grab a pen and paper as we will be pausing at various stages to reflect and take notes. Respect Me is Scotland's anti-bullying service and was set up in 2007. We're funded by the Scottish Government and we're managed by the Scottish Association for Mental Health and LGBT Youth Scotland. We work with all adults involved in the lives of children and young people to give them the practical skills and confidence with which to support children who are bullied and those who bully others. We aim to build the capacity of these adults to affect change and challenge bullying and stigma at an individual, school, family, community and societal level. We also campaign at a national level to raise awareness of the service and the impact that bullying can have. Our aim in these modules is to introduce you to Respect for All, the national approach to anti-bullying for Scotland's children and young people, and the range of practices that can be used to prevent and respond to bullying. By having an effective anti-bullying policy and the right practices, we lay the foundations for setting an ethos of positive and respectful relationships within your organisation. If you aren't already aware, Respect for All sets out the best approaches to policy and practice. It's a document that you can find on the Scottish Government website and we'll link to that at the end. So, over the course of these 4 modules, we'll cover all the key learning messages that are included in our full day face-to-face Bullying It's Never Acceptable training session. Now, the most important way and the most effective way of tackling bullying is to prevent it from happening in the first place. The first 3 modules will equip you with the knowledge and skills with which to prevent bullying. And then the 4th module will look at practical anti-bullying strategies. In Module 1, we'll look at why addressing bullying is essential within the context of Respect for All. Module 2, we'll be looking at what bullying is, what bullying isn't, and the types of bullying behaviour that exist. In Module 3, we'll look at what we can do to prevent bullying by ensuring consistent practice across your organisation. And then finally, Module 4 will explore practical strategies around responding effectively to bullying behaviour. It's important to watch these modules in order to ensure that you have the basis of understanding of Respect for All and how it informs the rest of the modules. So, Module 1, why address bullying? We'll be thinking about attitudes and preconceptions around about bullying, and we'll also be looking at some impacts of bullying. So, let's start today by first asking why we need to address bullying. You might like to pause here for a few moments to reflect on why you decided to watch this webinar in the first place. So take a minute or 2 just to reflect on that. Press pause and then press play again when you're ready to continue. So bullying is an issue that has likely affected all of us in some way. And Respect Me 2014 research showed that 30% of children and young people have experienced bullying. Respect for All provides useful guidance for all those working with children and young people. It contains a holistic anti-bullying framework and information for practitioners, parents and carers, as well as young people. Everyone has a role to play in addressing bullying. Bullying is also a children's rights issue. Every child has the right to feel safe and protected, and that includes online. And it's our role as professionals to protect those rights and help young people understand that bullying is never acceptable. The key messages from the guidance are that bullying is everyone's responsibility. Addressing bullying is both about prevention and response. It sets bullying within the context of positive relationships, which should be at the heart of all work with children and young people. Respect for All also sets out an agreed definition of bullying in Scotland, which should be reflected in organisational and local anti-bullying policies and practice. It also contains an explicit commitment to addressing all types of bullying, including prejudice-based bullying. Before we start, let's look at the agreed definition of bullying in Scotland that we should all be working towards. Please bear in mind that Respect for All is Scotland's national approach to bullying behaviour. So, just reading from the slide here, bullying is both behaviour and impact. The impact is on a person's capacity to feel in control of themselves. This is what we term their sense of agency. Bullying takes place in the context of relationships. It's behaviour that can make people feel hurt, threatened and left out, and it's behaviour that happens face-to-face and online. Having an agreed definition means that we can recognise and respond to bullying behaviour in a consistent way, not just across an organisation, but right across Scotland. We will explore this definition later in Module 2, and we mention it at this point so you can have it in mind while moving through the rest of the module. Right, there are many attitudes in society about what constitutes bullying and how those who are being bullied should react. These attitudes can perpetuate the notion that bullying is acceptable and create environments where bullying is allowed to thrive, unfortunately. These attitudes can have an effect on our practice as professionals and how we respond to bullying incidents. So here are 3 common attitudes about bullying. Let's take some time now to reflect on these. Consider whether you agree or disagree, why you agree or disagree with them, and take notes on that. Then press pause at the moment and write down your thoughts, and we'll discuss them together once you're done. Take about 10 minutes to do that. Okay, press pause and then press play again when you're ready. Okay, now you've taken some time to reflect on these common attitudes. Let's consider each of these in turn. So our first one there. Bullying is a normal part of growing up and it can build resilience. There are 2 words that people focus on in this slide when we work on these on the day workshops. And the first one of these is normal and the second one is resilience. So let's look at normal first of all. Bullying is a normal part of growing up. Normal in this case, in this context, is quite problematic. We need to understand that while bullying might be common, that doesn't mean that it's acceptable. By saying that it's a normal part of growing up, that risks normalising it as if it's something that should be just accepted and just put up with. But adults don't expect to be verbally or physically abused by colleagues or friends. So children and young people have the same right to be free from bullying and to feel safe in their environments. And coming on to resilience now, comments from adults such as, well, it happened to me and I turned out all right, or it'll toughen you up, it's character building. They might be intended to reassure children, but the risk is that it can dismiss how a child feels about bullying, and it implies that there's nothing that needs to be done or nothing that can be done about the situation that they're in, and nothing they can do or should bother about doing to help themselves. Children, also bear in mind when it comes to resilience that children are all different and have varying levels of resilience. Again, depending on different things as well. So a child might be more affected by bullying behaviour than others, depending on their unique levels of resilience towards bullying in relationships. That's not their fault, and it doesn't make them weak. Some people wonder to what extent bullying could build resilience. Well, it is possible through, for example, effective response. So considering recovery, considering how we support young people, maybe signposting them to support and advice, appropriate response of adults, positive relationships, role modelling, emotional literacy, and so on. But bullying in itself does not inherently build resilience. It depends upon having the strategies already in place with which you can respond to bullying. And not all young people have the emotional strategies in place already with which to do so. So that's our role as professionals and as adults, is to support young people in finding these strategies. Okay. Resilience can be described as the process of capacity for or outcome of successful adaptation, despite challenging or threatening circumstances. Bullying and trauma can strip away at a child or a young person's resilience if they don't have strategies in place. It can make it hard for them to talk about how they feel, to look for help, and to cope with the impacts of bullying. Traumatic events can undermine resilience, but effective support can help to build resilience. Also remember that a child's resilience can depend on varying factors, including what else is currently going on in that child's life, what has happened to them in the past, the levels of support they have around them, as well as their innate temperament as well. So what can we do to help promote resilience? Children and young people need positive relationships around about them, together with adults who set boundaries, provide guidance, and are good role models. Young people need love, praise, and recognition to build their self-belief, their optimism, their active engagement, as well as their sense of purpose. These are the things that give them the ability and the support needed to cope with difficulties. Take a moment to think about the things that happen or exist within your own setting to help children and young people build resilience. So, for example, how is a positive, safe climate created within your context? How do people, in what way to what extent do children feel that they belong and are connected with their social group? What initiatives are there within your organisation to ensure that they're involved in decision making and policies that affect them? How do you enable challenge and success for young people? And how are young children recognised for their achievements? So press pause and jot down your ideas. Take a few minutes and press play again when you're ready to begin. Okay, the next attitude. People who are bullied need to stand up for themselves. This is another common attitude that we might have grown up with or we might encounter quite regularly. And to be specific here, we could talk about standing up for yourself in a verbal way, but we're mostly talking about standing up for yourself in a physical way. This is common advice given to young people and often by parents. And it's understandably given as advice because of the emotional response that the situation can evoke. But the thing is, as we all know, there are obvious risks involved for children and young people who take this approach. Giving this advice doesn't take into account that some young people can't or won't hit back. They don't have the physical capacity to stand up for themselves, or perhaps they lack the confidence. As practitioners, we have a responsibility to promote positive relationships, to teach young people alternatives to using violence, and help develop their ability to resolve conflict and manage their feelings in a positive way. Let's take a little moment or two. Let's take a look at a short video that examines this attitude in more detail and will help us to understand why it's the most risky advice. This video that I'm about to show is also available on the respectme.org.uk website, and it can be used, as well as with professionals, can also be used with parents and young people too, if you want to discuss this aspect of response to bullying.
Punch him. If he bothers you again, son, just punch him. I mean, that's bullying, what he's doing to you. The only way to stop it is to punch him hard enough that he can't punch back. Okay, son?
Before you give advice about bullying, get some. Visit respectme.org.uk.
Okay. So let's consider what the key messages are of the film that we've just watched. Bear in mind that the last thing we want to do is make the dad the villain of the piece in this video. Hearing that your child is being bullied brings out an understandably emotional response in parents and carers. And it's entirely possible that that's the only advice that they were given as they were growing up as well. And because of the emotional response, sometimes the advice that we give to children and young people isn't necessarily the best advice. Children and young people have told us that being told to hit someone back if they're being bullied is a common response. So we know that it exists as an option to use, but it's not necessarily the best or the safest option to take. So what we can do here then is provide alternatives. As professionals, we can help young people explore a range of options available to deal with bullying behaviours and therefore help them weigh up the risks of hitting back as a response. We can help them weigh up the pros and cons of various responses. As adults, we need to consider as well that what we're teaching children about resolving conflict, if we advocate this approach, it's not advice that we would give to adults in the workplace, for example. So therefore, we encourage all adults to get advice before you give advice because of the potential negative consequences for young people. Okay, your next attitude. If it happens outside our organisation, it's not our problem. So what if a child reports bullying and then they're told by that adult that if it's happened outside the school or that organisation, then there's nothing they can do? The first problem with that is that if a child or a young person chooses to tell you about something that's happened elsewhere, it's because they've trusted you to do your best by them. It's because, quite possibly, they're telling you because they have no one else to tell, or you're the person that they trust the most to give the advice that they need. It's possible they're looking for signposting, or they're looking for emotional support. So even if bullying has happened outside your organisation, bear in mind that the impact of it can be carried with the young person involved into your context, and it could be undermining their ability and their well-being and their ability to participate in your setting. If it's affecting the young person while they're in your care, then it's your responsibility to address it. Let's consider for a second why this attitude might be prevalent. It's understandable that organisations might feel limited in what they can do to respond. Individuals may struggle with capacity issues in that they might not understand or they might not realise just what support and advice they could give, or they might feel that it's the domain of parents and others to address. Bear in mind that no matter where the incident has happened, we should focus on the impact that it's had and how we can best support those involved. And this also includes online bullying. Online bullying can still have a significant effect, a significant impact on young people. And your reaction to online bullying should be pretty much the same as your reaction to a disclosure of any other type of bullying. Focus on the behaviour and the impact that it's had. And we will be coming back to these two words, behaviour and impact, throughout the modules. Remember that if a child is being bullied online, they're probably also experiencing face-to-face bullying by the same people and for the same reasons. And that might be also happening within your context too. Also remember that behind every online bullying incident are people. It's still about behaviour and relationships, what someone does to someone else and the impact it has on their ability to feel in control of their lives. respectme's guide for parents and carers contains a section on online bullying and how to help keep children and young people safe online. So let's consider now the impacts of bullying. You might want to draw a little stick figure on a piece of paper and then have a think about the following. What does a child or a young person need in order to survive, in order to develop, and in order to thrive? So around about your stick figure, write down all the things that a young person needs to survive, to develop, and to thrive. take a few minutes and then press play again when you're ready, and we'll share some ideas. Okay, here are a few of the things that come up quite often in the Respect Me workshops. So to survive, develop and thrive, young people need food, exercise, shelter, play, love, fun, learning, success, respect, friends, confidence, relaxation, and need to feel that they're being cared for. Okay, that's just a few of the options. Feel free to take a note of any of those if you like. Now, let's have a think about how these things might be affected by bullying. So, for example, if you've written down that a child needs to feel included and to have hobbies, well, if a child is being bullied, they might withdraw from their usual activities and withdraw from their friends as a response to bullying. So bullying has a ripple effect. It not only affects individuals, but groups of young people, families, organisations, and wider society. Again, take a couple of minutes to reflect on what wider impacts of bullying you've seen in your own setting. So, for example, even just the anticipation of bullying can have an impact. Bullying doesn't need to be currently taking place to have an effect. For those who have been bullied or threatened, the fear and the anticipation of further bullying can affect a child's ability to be themselves and to have positive relationships. It can also have an impact on school attendance and attainment. So, would you want to go to a place where you knew you would be subjected to physical, verbal, or emotional abuse? Not attending school puts young people at risk. Missing school or truanting regularly can, of course, impact on levels of attainment, which will directly affect the opportunities available to children and young people in later life. Mental health and wellbeing concerns. For example, eating disorders can result from young children and young people regulating their eating habits, both to change their appearance and perhaps to gain some control over the bullying situation that they find themselves in. We also know that children and young people use self-harm as a way of coping with difficult feelings. So that can be a sign to look out for in relation to bullying. And depression. Bullying behaviour can make it hard to go to school, to go to clubs, to get out of bed in the morning. It can make it hard for young people to talk to parents or relate to their friends. So then that young person sometimes turns inward to deal with it. So as adults, this is something we need to bear in mind. Being bullied can also sometimes impact a young person because it then results in bullying behaviour on their part or violence towards others. Young people who have been constantly taunted, antagonised, physically, emotionally or verbally abused can quickly become aggressive. It can lead the young person to have an explosive outburst, and a young person who's being bullied might display bullying behaviour themselves in order to cope with the situation. Also bear in mind that bullying can result in limited aspirations. A constant stream of negative, destructive comments can and do drive people down, and they effectively lower or change their aspirations to fit in. Or sometimes they see themselves as people with low worth, with nothing meaningful to contribute and zero confidence. This contributes significantly to social exclusion and can result in the inability to foster and maintain positive relationships. And the ultimate impact of bullying behaviour, unfortunately, in some cases. Sadly, there are too many stories of young people reaching the point where they feel the only answer is to take their own lives. We must give children and young people the capacity to talk or express themselves safely in order to try and address the anxieties and the pent-up feelings they have. If you require more information on suicide prevention, there are a number of places and a number of training programmes that you can get involved in. So Safe Talk and Assist are two examples, and you can visit samh.org.uk for more information. So if we look back at this here, and we consider Shinari, the wellbeing indicators that guide our assessment of wellbeing concerns, bullying can impact all aspects of a young person's wellbeing. As we talked about, it can impact the relationship with food, with exercise, with shelter. If they don't feel that they're getting a chance, if they're being bullied online, they're maybe not getting a chance to relax at home. Play, they're maybe not playing their friends, they're not having much fun. They don't feel perhaps loved. They can't concentrate on their learning in school. So they're not experiencing success. They don't feel respected. It may be impacting their relationship with friends, impacting their confidence. They maybe don't feel that they're being cared for, and they're not able to relax. So when we consider then Shinari, do they feel safe? Do they feel healthy? Are they achieving? Do they feel nurtured, active? Do they feel respected? Do they feel responsible? Are they confident enough to take responsibility over their own lives? Do they have control over their own lives? And do they feel included? Bullying can affect all aspects of a young person's well-being, which is why it's so important that we tackle it. So that's us come towards the end of Module 1. I would like you to take a few moments to reflect on, first of all, our 3 common attitudes about bullying that we discussed. Then think, what are your reflections regarding how resilience relates to bullying? Then consider, how have your thoughts and feelings around the impacts of bullying been affected so far? So take a few minutes to reflect on that, please. We hope you found the information in Module 1 a useful introduction to bullying. In Module 2, we will explore Respect for All, Scotland's national approach to anti-bullying. We'll be reflecting on the Respect for All definition of bullying and why this has been developed. We'll also be looking at example scenarios of bullying and discussing those, and we'll be looking at online bullying in a little more detail. And we'll also be reflecting on prejudice-based bullying. So we look forward to you joining us next time for those. And in the meantime, please click on the link below to evaluate this module. Your feedback is really important to us, and we'd be very grateful if you could take a few moments to complete it. Thank you very much for joining us for Module 1, and we'll see you again soon.